In today's video, we're going to look at clever rigging tricks, animation fundamentals, modeling workflows, optimization tips, and even some industry-level work that proves, once again, you don't need expensive software to create high-end visuals. Let's start off with this Super Smash Bros. Inspired rig by Nanobuds. While the game itself is technically 2D, it's actually much easier to build something like this inside a 3D application than inside a strict 2D engine. To keep the character from looking like a flat card jumping around the screen, Nanobuds separates different parts of the character and offsets them slightly along the 3D axis. The game still behaves like a 2D side-scroller. You can't move forward or backward toward the camera, but perspective and parallax still exist in the scene. That tiny bit of depth gives the character volume without actually modeling full geometry, which is a pretty clever trick. The Lattice object is one of those tools that just sits there in Blender and rarely gets used by probably 90% of users. But every once in a while, someone shows what it can really do. Here, Harry Heath demonstrates how powerful it actually is. You can use lattices to animate fake collisions without complicated simulations, make objects look like they're being swallowed, create wind animations, or even change a character's shape without touching the rig. In this example, he's using the lattice in Unreal Engine, but honestly, all 3D applications are basically the same under the hood, just different interfaces and cosmetics. The core tools and ideas translate almost everywhere. You can easily blur an HDRI image in the viewport, but oddly enough, that blur usually doesn't show up in the final render. Surprisingly, the fix is not that complicated. The idea is simple. Mix white noise with the coordinates of the HDRI image and use that factor as the blur strength. This can help smooth out reflections and soften lighting in your scene. If your HDRI is the main source of lighting, just save this setup into your library and you'll always have a quick way to blur backgrounds. If you're getting started with animation in Blender, you absolutely have to understand the fundamentals, the famous 12 principles of animation. Luckily, the frame-by-frame page has a really nice animated GIF that shows them all in one place. It's one of those things you can save somewhere or bookmark so you can revisit it whenever you forget how squash and stretch, anticipation, or follow-through work. It's basically a cheat sheet for good animation. Sometimes reality is more ridiculous and more entertaining than fiction. If you watch the animation of this cat character, you might think it's exaggerated or just some funny gag the animator added. But when you see the real-life reference, it's actually even funnier. That's why reference is so important. A lot of classic animations, including many Tom and Jerry moments, were basically frame-by-frame recreations of real footage. If you hadn't studied those references, you'd never even think to animate something like that. If you appreciate the craft behind stylized animation, you're going to love this breakdown by Caroline LaVille. She shows the full process behind building a stylized character, from blocking to modeling to draw overs and expression exploration. My favorite part is the draw over stage. It really shows that stylized art isn't just switching on line art and calling it a day. Line art is a great starting point, but if you want expressive animation, the strokes often need to be drawn by hand. There's real work behind that style. Want to learn how to make braided hair? Apparently, 1 minute is all you need. This quick tutorial shows a simple workflow starting with 3 stacked cylinders forming the braid shape. The demo is done in Maya, but the idea transfers easily to Blender. Instead of manually extruding, you can use the screw modifier to get a similar result with fewer steps. Duplicate the mesh, mirror the copy, move it slightly below the other section, delete extra geometry, add a bend modifier, rig the hair, and you're good to go. Have you ever wondered why video games with hundreds of models, textures, animations, and effects can run smoothly in real time on a mid-computer or even a phone, while the same scene might struggle inside Blender on a powerful workstation? The answer is optimization. Game engines structure their scenes very differently. Most meshes are instances, and the underlying geometry is rarely meant to be edited, so a lot of data that Blender keeps around simply doesn't exist there. Some Blender add-ons try to bring similar optimization tricks into Blender, though at a smaller scale. There's modeling from reference, and then there's this. Honestly, this feels like someone just flexing on the rest of us. If I could sketch directly in 3D space like this, I'd probably be the best modeler alive. Unfortunately, I'm not even that good at drawing in 2 dimensions. So when it comes to drawing in 3 dimensions, I'll just quietly sit down and admire people who can do it. Interestingly, there is a Blender add-on that helps with drawing in 3 dimensions. It works by creating temporary 2-dimensional planes in any orientation you want. So technically, you're still drawing in 2 dimensions, but the plane automatically reorients itself in 3D space depending on where you want to draw. That makes it much easier to sketch directly inside your scene, and it's also great for stylized painted artwork inside Blender. You might think that once you learn how to model, everything becomes easy. Surprise, surprise, that's not how it works. Some things simply have a better approach than others. Here, John van den Hemel shows a very clean workflow for modeling and sculpting an ear, and honestly, this is probably the easiest approach you'll find. Now you just need to know how to sculpt the eye, so here is a tutorial on how to do that from Anastas. The easiest part to model, obviously, are the balls, and it's just 2 spheres, and you are good to go. Throw them in a sack of cloth, and you have an absolute cinema moment. I was watching the K-pop Demon Hunter breakdown and realized that Blender's biggest competition isn't really traditional 3D software like Cinema 4D, Maya, or 3ds Max. It's actually Unreal Engine. What's funny is that Epic Games is also one of the major contributors to Blender's development. One of the main places Blender has been used in Hollywood is previs. Before a movie or animation is fully produced, artists create simple scenes to test timing, camera angles, and composition. But Unreal has been moving closer to that territory as well, with its own animation tools, rigging systems, and simulation features, slowly turning it into a full production environment rather than just a game engine. Going back to how powerful Blender actually is, take a look at high-end commercial work done entirely with it. I always love when artists show side-by-side renders, because once you see it, there's no pretending you need expensive software to achieve results like this. Yes, the project itself may require a lot of time and effort, but technically everything here is achievable with the same tools you already have access to in Blender. And speaking of getting paid, here is yet again Alex Sadiev making a buck with this post. I won't lie, working for Esports looks so addicting and fun, and I'm sure it is. They use Blender to create amazing 3D renders for esports teams and other companies. Their page is a great place to get inspiration from, especially if you want to work with similar clients. You can pick up on the style and visual communication that tends to attract those kinds of projects. If you study the style and visual communication used in those projects, you can start understanding what attracts clients in those industries. And that's it for today's roundup. As always, it's amazing to see the kind of creativity coming out of the Blender community every week. From clever rig setups to stylized animation workflows and industry-level projects, it just shows how far you can push the software once you understand the tools. If you want to explore even more workflows like this, you can also check out some of my own projects. The True Image Editor lets you edit textures directly inside Blender without constantly jumping between different programs. The Blender Everything Pack is a collection of geometry nodes,